You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's ride!
Hey everybody, I hope you're nice and warm. I hope you're warm. Hope everything's well. You know, it's kind of, you know what the coziest thing about the last couple of days is that, first of all, I loved going out into the craziness. We were already, when I see a storm coming out, we always talk about the COVID, you know, how when it was leading up to the 2 weeks to flatten the curve. So you know how it kind of felt like we were preparing for a blizzard? Everybody was going to Costco and getting themselves butter and milk and bread and all that stuff. Like there was just going to be like a cozy night at home while they, sleet and snow and all that stuff. I wish it was like that. You had to keep reminding yourself, now this is different. It's kind of weird. But last night, Saturday going into Sunday, that's what it felt like. And it was a nice little storm. We didn't lose power. We didn't lose anything. I was out there a lot though, and a lot of work, staying on top of that shit. But it was fun. Got about, I don't know, maybe 14 inches of snow over here, and I think some are saying we get another 6 to 10 coming this Saturday night. I don't know. But what made it interesting is because so many people were experiencing it at once. You know, you can be in New York, or you can be in Tennessee, or you can be in Pennsylvania, and everybody's, or the Deep South, and everybody's kind of talking about the same storm as we're experiencing it in real time. I'm working on finding a little window of time that I can bring Jim Lee on to ask him, hey, how manufactured was this storm, and what was the purpose of it? It reminded me of the old days in the 90s. Some really great storms back in the 90s. It moved easily. It moved like baby powder. It was good. I brought Aurora out sleigh riding a little bit today around 2:45. We spent about an hour at a park, and we went down I'll be actually putting up a couple of videos from that to the members only section afterwards. So if you're a monthly sponsor, member, wherever the hell you are a member, it'll be up there tomorrow. I think you'll like it. And that's that. It's all behind us now, and we know who the Super Bowl contestants are going to be. But man, oh man, we got to talk about Minnesota. We've got to talk about a few other things, and we're going to talk about it with a really great guest here tonight. Tonight, a guest in the studio, which I was so excited about. I didn't even put it on the calendar. And then, of course, in came the storm, and I was like, oh no. I wonder if it's going to be even feasible for him to come in, but it just, if the storm started 6 hours later than it did, it would have been a real barb to the side. But that's not the case, and he's here tonight. His name is Taylor Johnatakis, and we talked with him maybe about a year and a half ago, or close to 2 years ago at this point, as he was awaiting sentencing in, Taylor, was it D.C.?
Yeah, D.C. Gulag.
D.C. Gulag.
D.C. Department of Corrections.
And you were, and okay, so here's the thing. I need to understand, because I don't remember, I realized when I was thinking about that first call that you had with us, you were only on for about 5 to 7 minutes. I forget about how that all worked. We have a mutual friend, Bryce.
Yep.
And he got in touch with me and told me your story. Hey, there's a Frankly that's, in prison right now, awaiting sentencing and all that stuff. and would love to get his message out there, but there's so many different types of prison call protocols. What did we do that it almost like a two-hop onto the show? What happened there?
So what happened was, and nobody ever told me this, but I had a 20 phone call or a 20 number limit to my like phone in jail, and you were the 21st phone call, so it was blocked. It was blocked, and I thought they were blocking the call. And they have a no, three-way calling rule in prison that's not enforced in the jail ever, especially in DC. And so I ended up having Bryce call you, and then he called, I called him, and then he just patched us through, and ended up causing me a lot of problems. They ended up bringing it up at sentencing and stuff like that. Yeah.
That's the other part of this. I forgot that it was brought up in sentence. Did they actually mention my show?
Oh yeah. They quoted it. They quoted the whole thing, and then they read out the whole URL, www or https www.quitefrankly, and they like read it, and then eventually about halfway through the long address, when it's all numbers and stuff, the judge abandoned it and just was like, it's in the record.
Shit. Like, what did they say about the show? Did they quote me?
Well, they were quoting me saying that I just pushed a gate, which I still maintain to this day. Right.
Yeah.
And, but they were basically saying that I had, subterfuge the rules, and, the marshals had notified the judge that I had made that phone call.
And an arrest warrant is being drafted right now for the host.
Yeah, seriously. It was like, oh geez. But it was no big, it was like no big deal, but at the same time, it was like, it's just another thing that they throw out there to just, they can't really make you out to be a terrorist. So they say that you make three-way phone calls from prison, and somehow that's a bad thing.
It was after we spoke with you is when I actually started digging a little bit more into everything that's been published out there. And there's quite a bit that, because you had one of the lengthier sentences.
Yeah. I was probably top 10% or something like that. I got 87 months, 7 years and 3 months.
Shortly after we spoke, I think that, I don't know, within a month or so after we spoke is when they gave you your sentence. It was 7 years plus.
Yeah. And they really had to manipulate it. I had co-defendants that I'd been severed from because I ended up going, representing myself. And so they went on to trial, and they got sentenced under the guidelines on the 1512, the obstruction of Congress charge, which is, this big 20-year sentence. So they got 6 and 9 years or 6 and 8 years. And then when I came in, there'd been an appeal that had happened by a gentleman named Lieutenant Colonel Larry Brock. He was a fellow J6er I ended up with in Missouri. And he had appealed the 1512 enhancements. This is before the Supreme Court just wiped it out. And they couldn't put enhancements on that charge. So that dropped my next highest charge down to the 111A, which was the assault on the federal officer. That's like the nonviolent assaults, the resist, impair, impede charge. And so they ended up, that is going to usually be like a 2-year charge. Like that's the equivalent of moving your wrist when you're getting handcuffed. That's impeding, impairing their ability. That's a 111A. And so that normally would be like a 2-year sentence. They ended up giving me a firearm enhancement. They gave me a couple other enhancements to
you had a gun on you?
No, it was a bike rack. They literally in the sentencing memorandum, it said, enhancement +4 firearm. And then there was a spot where they usually would describe, Glock 19 or something like that. Nope. They wrote metal barricade without right. Yeah. They basically wrote bike rack without writing bike rack, metal barricade, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, it's a good thing it wasn't one of those high capacity bike racks. They would have thrown another enhancement on there.
I was going to say, who cares what it's not a projectile weapon.
I have to say this, watching all the riots in 2020 and then now watching them concurrently in Minnesota, these people are playing with fire. You have no idea what you're dealing with federal enhancements and stuff like that. When you start conspiring, when you start, coming out of messaging chats and then showing up at a protest and you start bringing implements, they were giving guys deadly weapon enhancements because they wore body armor. If you go to a protest and you're wearing body armor, even if you're unarmed, they consider that being armed. So, these people are playing with fire. You touch a bike rack, yeah, you might get your little slap on the wrist, or you might find yourself sitting close to a decade in prison, on some stupid charge.
There's so many women right now on TikTok and elsewhere. It's like you can just scroll on X in particular. You can just go through an endless scroll of them, all saying the same thing. They seem like they're preparing for death. It's not hyperbole at all. They seem resigned. Some of them are saying things like, listen, they're going to kill us all anyway. We might as well get prepared for so-and-so. I just went out and bought myself some body armor, Kevlar.
I saw that earlier.
And just watching there, I mean, we have to talk about Minnesota because, of course, it is not disconnected from what you're talking about.
No.
And whereas I said
it's the winter of love. It's the same people, same crowd, same thing. They've just shifted their messaging a little bit to be anti-ice instead of, anti whatever. Same people. It's just a color revolution. For everybody who sees it, you can't unsee it, and there's no amount of rhetoric that gets people to budge, which is why Trump's numbers have maintained pretty solid. It's like you can't run a color revolution every 2 or 3 years. You got to let the winner win at some point.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely some. I think that's what is just so evident right now is that at least at the moment there's a lot of double standards. Because, we're talking about a very small window of time at the Capitol in January of 2021 that turned into a 4-year manhunt for people nonstop resources to find people all over the place with many more who are on the list. I know a couple of people who, up until the point that the dogs were called off and people like you were let loose, I knew at least a small handful of people who were just, they were quietly lawyering up and they had seen their faces on certain websites and shit like that. And they just knew if this had continued, eventually the knock would come on the door or, they would break down the door.
It blew me away how it wasn't really till I got back from prison that people started coming up to me that had gone to J6, people even that I knew and never told me. They never disclosed me that they had gone. There were people who told me, parts of the Capitol grounds that they went to, so they were probably on the list or at least potentially could have been if somebody turned them in. And it just shocked me how much the prosecution of the January 6ers did in fact chill the 500,000 to 2 million people that showed up that day that couldn't really speak out. And of course, we forget about things like taking down Parler. And, that was really a hub for a lot of conservatives right in that little window of time. And it was just gone overnight. And then, of course, Twitter, there was the huge canceling of everybody. Basically, anybody that had ever retweeted a Q post got their accounts deleted, it seemed like.
I know. I don't know what the hell. I mean, what the crazy thing for me is I've never really lost. I got kicked off of Streamlabs for a little while. Now we're back on. I had problems with Spotify recently, but not because of censorship. I feel like whereas some people were just taken off, I was allowed to just spin my wheels in mud but it was never taken. I don't know. Sometimes I have survivor's guilt.
Well, let me tell you what happened to me, right? So in 2020, I started my little podcast, The Peasant's Perspective. And I don't know, we were like 100 episodes in covering the 2020 riots. And then COVID's happening. It's all going on, right? So it was like, and we're in Seattle, so we're like right in the thick of it. And I did an episode where a couple things were happening. I did a little research on Mitt Romney, and then I did some, there was that Wayfair scandal. Do you remember when that broke?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. That kind of came and went, right? So over that weekend, I
still give it a lot of credence. I said that still is inexplicable to me.
There's no credence. It happened and they censored it and covered it up. There's no resolution to that story. Like, they confirmed, yes, these lockers are for $5,000. Why are they on your website? Why are there so many? Why did they link up to the missing kids numbers and all that stuff?
And the names.
So I covered that story and I made this weird connection because I had these two separate stories. I had a Mitt Romney thread that I was pulling on that day, and I had the Wayfair story that I was pulling on that day. I pulled this old Daily Beast article, which is like a left-wing rag, right? And it was back when Mitt Romney was running for president. And it said that at Bain Capital, you know who his first investor was, the first $2 million he took on deposit at Bain Capital, according to Daily Beast?
Oh.
Robert Maxwell.
Oh.
Ghislaine Maxwell's dad. And then I find out that Bain Capital underwrites the mortgages for Wayfair. And their headquarters are right next to each other down in California. All in one, it's like, wow, well, these two stories just stepped on each other. And then Spotify deleted my entire podcast library, gone the next day.
Well, we'll be gone tomorrow now. So thank you.
Sorry, guys.
No.
If you do, then somebody needs to call the feds and get an investigation really going there. But that was like the height of canceling everybody. Now we're kind of in a new regime. So the survivor's guilt, we're treading on thin ice, but I haven't heard of anybody being canceled recently.
No. There's definitely a weird backpedaling and a restoration that's been made to a lot of different types of people. And I mean, it was so touch and go at one point. You remember one of the Adam Schiff whistleblower scandals,
yeah,
Eric Sharmella?
Yes. Yes.
That was one
The
guy,
name that shall not be named.
you couldn't say his name. There are people who got strikes and some that lost their channels during that whole thing just because they deduced what was very, very obvious at the time, and of course an obvious scam.
Yeah.
So, and you want to talk about, again, double standard, just nuts. But so
the interesting thing, when Spotify got rid of my whole account, almost instantly a new podcast was posted by some historian at some lefty university called The Peasant's Perspective, and he's got 10-second episodes. He put like 20 10-second episodes up there. So as soon as they took my account off, it was like they dumped in a placeholder account so that I couldn't get that same name on Spotify again. You know, it was really weird.
wow.
Yeah. So if anybody looked it up, they'd come up with some podcast that was pointless. I mean, it literally has like 20-second episodes and 10 or 20 of them.
You know, I know this is
An op, clearly an op.
Yeah, well, it takes us off track, no doubt. 10. You're saying so every episode, it was only 10. What did you hear what they were? Like, what was the 10-second episode comprising of? Like, it was just the
It was some guy talking about peasants in Russia for a minute. I mean, it was literally just to create the name and a couple episodes just to fill the space.
Oh, so it was more than actual 10 seconds.
It wasn't much. I mean, you could probably look it up on Spotify, but it wasn't much.
That's what I loved about Mike Rowe's podcast when it first came out. When he first started doing years ago, the way I heard it, they were, I don't know if they were weekly episodes, but they were no longer than 5 or 10 minutes. And it was a really quick, I don't know, wives tale or local folklore. The way I heard it, a really, highlighting a really interesting person or a nice time in America or whatever, thing like that. I used to love. I know this is off topic. That's not what The Peasant's Perspective was, but I'm just saying. You just reminded me. There's only one person I knew who put out podcasts that were
minutes long.
That were minutes long. It was Mike Rowe, and it was great.
Yeah.
How long were you watching this show? Because I didn't know. See, I was just the other day I was talking about all the different ways that I even learn about how long a person will have been connected to the show. Sometimes it's through sickness or getting over a sickness or an untimely death or something. Someone will reach out and say, my friend, my uncle, my father loved your show for so many years, and immediately I feel like I knew them forever. And in your case was very unique because I had another viewer of the show, Bryce, introduce himself to me and said, listen, there's a Frankly that is in detention right now. And so that's how I knew who Taylor was.
I got letters from people that were like, we heard you on Quite Frankly. And in fact, even supporters that were already in contact with me were listening to you and heard me and were writing me. So yeah, you've got influence, you've got impact on people's lives. People like to tune in and hear this, we become part of your family. I started listening to your show 2016, somewhere right around after Trump was elected. And I listened to it daily. I was a daily listener. I was in the construction industry doing septic. So I just have my earbuds in all day long while I was operating excavators and putting in sewer line.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's it. Well,
you kept me company during some really shitty moments, Frank.
I can't imagine. I really can't imagine. I mean, I get claustrophobic in elevators sometimes if there's too many people that are in there. So to think about, well, you can't leave this building for X amount of years. When somebody tells you that, holy shit, man.
That was rough. Yesterday I was in a hotel room and a friend called me and was like, are you doing okay? And I was like, this is like 4 times the size of my cell. I've got a shower, a TV, my cell phone. I was like, comfortable beds. I'm like, I'm okay. I've done the solitary confinement thing. I've been on lockdown in a cell. I can handle my own during a snowstorm in a hotel. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything. Yeah. It's almost like at the end of what's it, Castaway.
Mm-hmm.
You're in the end of Castaway where Tom Hanks is just kind of like he's like just playing with the lighter.
Yeah.
He's like how easy it is to just spark fire right there in your hand, whereas you were rubbing sticks together for all those years on the island, and where do I go? It's just like, wow, I don't know. You're back in civilization again.
You want to know what it was for me? It's dogs. So before I went, I've always been a dog lover, but I had 2 dogs that were not like snugglers and they didn't come over and need pets. They were just really chill to sit in the corner and just be in the room with you. And when I went to the gulag, you spend all that time indoors. You don't ever get outside. So you got no vitamin D and there's no pleasure in there, right? So there's no oxytocin that you're getting at any moment, at any point. And the dopamine is fleeting. And by the time I got to Springfield, Missouri, they had a dog program where they trained service dogs from puppies up. And so, I'd be out on the yard and one of the inmates would be out there walking the dog and you could go pet the dog. And I could feel the chemical reaction in my body. I could feel something that I'd never felt. There'd never been enough time in my life that I hadn't gotten a hug or a human contact or something like that until I'd been through about a year in prison. And then it was like, you don't touch other people in prison and other people don't touch you. So you lack contact, you lack sunlight. So to just like touch a dog and feel that oxytocin, it was pretty incredible. So that feeling of just looking at a lighter, there were many, many things when I got home. I was like, I wouldn't have thought to appreciate this until it was taken away from me.
We take a lot of things for granted.
Yeah.
And we really do. I mean, and I'm not even talking about anything that you would need incarceration to be appreciative of, but even just when it comes to health, when it comes to things like eyesight, to be able to see. We were watching a reel the other night of a blind man that was in an art gallery and just kind of being led through a sculpture that this artist had made, and he's there with the artist and he's appreciating it as if he had eyes that we don't even have, and he's just set aback by the beauty of it all, and all he's doing is using his fingertips. And I'm saying to myself, I can kick myself for taking things like this for granted as much as I do, even though I appreciate art and all that. I think that's just the most important fight that we can ever put ourselves into on a day-to-day basis, is that fight for perspective.
Yeah.
And obviously what you've been through is one of those things. So after you were sentenced in DC, they sent you into the middle of the country? What happened?
Yeah, so I got sentenced in DC, and then they rushed me out of there. I used to call into the Vigil pretty frequently, the Freedom Corner, where Mickey, Ashley Babbitt's mom, and many other supporters would gather nightly outside the DC gulag. So I'd call into there frequently, and people who called in frequently, they'd haul their butts out of there as soon as they were sentenced because they didn't want you talking and stuff like that. So they hauled me out of there a couple days after sentencing. I ended up in Philadelphia, spent 3 weeks there. Then they took me to Oklahoma, and then I made my way down to Springfield, Missouri, and that's where I finished it out at the United States Medical Center for Federal Prisoners. And it's a administrative facility, which basically means it's a max security facility because they house inmates that need hospital services that can range in security levels from death row all the way down to someone like me who should have been in a camp. And so it was pretty interesting. Wasn't the worst place to be. I could have definitely been in a worse prison, but it was an old prison. I had a cell that had no window. It had bars and everything, but the window had been broken out. So summers in Missouri are super hot, winters are super cold, and we were just in a cell with no heat, and we had radiator heating. And of course, you know how consistent radiator heating can be. So it was interesting, and it was really interesting to do that. There's a phrase in prison that you hear from sane prisoners. They say the worst day on the outside is better than the best day in prison. And that is a perspective that I came back with. I was like, yeah, even on a hard day, days that suck, it's way better than the best day I ever had in prison. Yeah. At least I have choices.
Absolutely. Can you imagine being one of those people who work at that medical prison that have to administer care to a person who's actually just going to be killed anyway?
Yeah, you talking about the guards or the inmates?
No, like you just said that they at these medical care facilities, I guess for people who have specialized health issues.
Where I was at, it was cancer, kidney failure, a lot of renal failure, so a lot of guys on dialysis, amputations, hospice care. That was it. I'll tell you,
but there's death row inmates.
Yeah. Some of the death row inmates, Joe Biden commuted their sentence to life. They were in my prison. In fact, I know a lot of inmates that Joe Biden commuted. They were leaving the place before I was. And by the way, violent felons. Violent felons.
When I think about the idea that, and I wonder if it's happened now, if anybody, any inmate in the United States has ever been executed who was already terminally ill. I wonder if that's like if somebody was terminally ill with cancer or something, and everything that they can do treatment wise was never going to bring them back, but they have an execution date coming up. Would they put that person on the gurney? I wonder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
The date's the date. They'll care for you the best they can, which is crappy, until the day you're executed. But your medical condition does not create a stay on your sentence.
Have any terminally ill inmates, death row inmates, ever been executed? Let's see.
While you're looking that up, I just mentioned
none. No terminally ill death row inmates have ever been executed. Wait, hold on. No, one person was. Wait, hold on. Let's see what this stupid machine comes up. Hold on, wait. Confirm it. Jimmy Dale Bland executed in 2007 with cancer. Bland's execution details. Maybe. Well, yeah, there's been rare cases in the United States where terminally ill death row inmates were executed rather than allowed to die naturally. Jimmy Dale Bland, executed by lethal injection in Oklahoma in June 26, 2007, age 49. He had terminal cancer and was given less than a year, possibly months to live by doctors, despite appeals arguing that execution was pointless given his impending natural death. Supreme Court and Oklahoma courts rejected stays and the execution proceeded.
Yeah. Yep.
Damn.
One of the things that because I was in a medical center and I'm watching these inmates with amputations and there's no sob stories. It doesn't matter how sick you are. Doesn't matter what kind of cancer you have. Doesn't matter how much pain you're in. Your sentence is your sentence and you're going to serve it out. Right. So it's like, it was really hard to see that because inside you want to be like, okay, this person's like in a wheelchair. They've got both their legs cut off. Like what are we really doing for society by keeping them in prison? Why can't they go to a nursing facility or house arrest or something? No, you're going to serve your sentence.
Man, it's, aside from being the family man that you are, what would you say your purpose is right now? Like, do you want to retreat into a more peaceful existence and let the world be what it is, or are your feelings more like pulling you toward disclosure and trying to get justice or retribution, or I don't know. I mean, you just think about January 6th in general as a story. There's still always the question about the pipe bomber.
Mm-hmm. Oh, jeez, don't even get me started on that.
Of course, the media involvement, the congressional stand-down orders, the Capitol law enforcement presence there that essentially were inviting people in, whereas there was more unruly parts of the campus grounds over there. There was a lot of people just having their tickets punched, as if they're coming in to see an exhibit at a museum. Hundreds of feds who are now confirmed in the crowd. We have those Ray Epps types that you kind of everybody circles the wagons around. Despite all those things, do you at this point do you just wash your hands of it and just like you want to? What are you doing?
No, absolutely not. I think the ledger needs the balance. I think the scales of justice need to come back into balance. So I think that people need to be held accountable. And I put myself out there when I went to arraignment. I planned on pleading guilty until they dropped felonies and 30 years. And I was like, oh, okay, hold on. I'm gonna have to, wait on that one because I believe in being accountable. And I actually didn't even argue my case. I didn't get out in the weeds and I didn't intend this. I just accepted everything. You say I'm a terrorist, I accept it. I was only in court to stand on my rights and reserve my rights and, push the speedy trial issue and push the judge told me before the jury was ever polled or before any scrap of evidence in my case had been presented at all. He told me, you're going to jail for a long time when this is all over, Mr. Johnatakis. So I was just kind of there to go through the process and try to highlight the due process violations and just how the system is not what we the people think it is. Right? Like, for example, we have a right to a speedy trial. And the Speedy Trial Act says you get 70 days to put on a trial. Do you think the federal government can put on a trial in 70 days? I don't know if they've ever done it. Right? But the first thing a defendant does when he walks into a courtroom is he starts waiving his rights. I told the Speedy Trial Act, I waived this right, I waived that. People fought and died on battlefields to preserve these rights for you. And when you need them the most Americans at the counsel of their attorney waive those rights. Those rights are there to protect you. Had this been a sane system,
what is the even legal strategy for waiving a speedy trial right?
Because defense attorneys say, well, we want time to review the evidence so we can fight the case. Well, we don't have to fight the case if we can make them go to 71 days. It disappears. So if the prosecution can't calendar and schedule a trial 70 days from arraignment, the case is over. So they've got to get you to waive the right. And the defense attorneys are in on it. I'm convinced. But they convince you that you need to toll the Speedy Trial Act so they can go through discovery. Listen, you don't need to go through discovery, right? If they can't put it on the calendar in 70 days, just ride the clock and call it good. Be done with it. And in my opinion, if more defendants did that, the judicial system would change dramatically and rapidly. Same thing with taking plea deals. right? They arrested so many January 6 defendants that every time someone got sentenced, they arrested a new person because the system was so clogged. What would have happened if people hadn't taken plea deals?
I was just going to say that because they were going. There's thousands.
It would have brought it to a screeching halt, right? But instead, people get in there, they start talking to the attorneys, and they start becoming a part of the machinery. They start getting on the court's calendar instead of making the court get on their calendar, which is, by the way, 70 days. So I got arrested February 11th, 2023. I didn't go to trial, or 2021, excuse me, the same year as J6. I was indicted on January 7th. I didn't go to trial till 2023, was that right? Yeah, 2023. I was 1,000 days plus on trial, and it actually became a real big issue as we got to the trial, the Speedy Trial Act, because I didn't waive my right, and they kept just tolling it without my consent. And when we got to the trial, the prosecution wanted to bump it again, and the judge wouldn't bump it because at that point I was really pushing the speedy trial issue. And the prosecution had to write a memo where they did the craziest math you would ever see, where they were using my co-defendant's motions, construing that to toll my speedy trial, and they made it so that my trial started on the 69th day. That's how important it is in the law, the administrative part of it. They have to do that trial on 70 days if you don't waive it, to the point that they put a memorandum on file that is full of garbage that turns 1,000 days or whatever into 69 days. Coincidentally, the exact date, the judge just pulled a calendar out 2 weeks earlier and scheduled a court date because I wouldn't waive my right. It's fascinating how the system just railroads. And if you're not ready to stand in your on your rights, they'll just take them from you, and they'll convince you to volunteer them away.
Days. I just went to go check right now. We spoke the first time. We spoke on I think January 9th, 2024.
Yeah. Yeah. And my trial was in November of 2023. So when
and you were sentenced in April.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I was sentenced in April.
And then that's it. And then I'm still that is such an incredible timeline for you personally, because you get that conclusion in April, and then, man, oh man, I mean, what a crazy year as far as just the election went, the campaigning went, Butler, the assassination attempts, and whatever the hell it is, the only way you're getting out of prison is if Donald Trump is elected.
That assassination day was it was two things. It was scary. You're on the interstate, car starts wobbling, your heart starts beating. It was that magnified, right? It was like, but then at the same time, there was this reassurance. By the time I put my head on bed at night, I was like, I'm going home. God save Donald Trump. I'm going home. Like I felt that way in my core. I was like, there's no way he dodged that bullet and I'm not going home. I felt a part of the story. I felt like he was saved. As much as he was saved for the country, he was saved for me and my family, right? Like God would do that just for me if that's what God wanted to do. And I felt this assurance that we were in his care. Like we had done what we could do. We had laid it all out on the field, and we just had to sit back and let what happened happen. And when that assassination attempt happened, I'll never forget. I'm walking to the chow hall, or walking to the chow hall, and somebody yells out, "Donald Trump's been shot. Donald Trump's been shot." And that's when it was like, my heart is in my stomach. I'm just, ugh. And then people are saying, "I think he's alive though. I think he stood back up," right? I'm getting bits of it because people had seen it in the rec room or whatever. And I'm heading to the chow hall. I got to go do the chow thing. So I rush through, do my chow. People are talking about it, but nobody had seen it because it had just happened. And so they just seen blurbs in between our move. It's like high school. You move every hour for 10 minutes. Yeah. So it was on a movement. And so as soon as I was done with chow, I headed straight back to my block, went into the TV room, and all the racist TVs had news on, and I was able to see the replay. And I just was like, fight, man. Like that's my guy.
If I was in your situation, it would be a very, very personal thing. It would be a personal victory. It'd be a personal blessing. It'd be a personal scare, the entire thing. I mean, it's on the line. I'm sure that there were quite a few people in your situation.
I remember I was in prison with this guy that was an Al-Qaeda guy. He was serving a 40-year sentence, and he's from Pakistan.
He's a member of Al-Qaeda?
Well, he's allegedly a member of Al-Qaeda. I personally don't believe he ever was. But what they did to us January 6ers, they'd been doing to Islamic terrorists for a long time. Like the railroading and stuff like that. His case was just I read a little bit about it, and it's always hard to tell because in prison you have to take people at their word. But it's not like I've detailed his case. But either way, he was Al-Qaeda. He was like 16 years into his sentence or something like that. But he came out of the TV room and he's like, "You're going home. Trump's going to win the election." He's like, "How could he not win after that? Like the whole world's going to support him. Everybody thinks he's amazing. Fight, fight, fight." He thought it was awesome. Simultaneously, a lot of the guys that grew up in the hood that had like had a lot of gunplay and bullets flying around in their lives, they all thought it was fake. That doesn't look right. That doesn't look, it was like instantly they were coming up with conspiracies how it wasn't real, but almost exclusively.
That was just Twitter. Twitter's essentially prison.
So here's the thing though. It was exclusively amongst the inmates that leaned left that were thinking that it was a setup or he wasn't really shot or he did it to himself. And I was like, it's always that way. You always want to think what the other guy's doing is a setup or something like that. Like it was interesting. Yeah.
Like I'm saying, it's just these little microcosms, and that prison it's really a little world unto itself.
It is a microcosm of a life. It has its own economy. We use stamps for money. You've got jobs, you've got commodity resources. Like if you have a job in the kitchen, it's like having an oil mine, right? You've got a constant supply of stuff you can sell. It's its own economy. It's its own dynamics. You've got demographics in there. You've got racism, peer pressure. You've got shot callers, the warden. I was just talking to someone the other day and I'm like, the presidents are like the shot caller for the races inside of the prison, but whoever's calling the real show is the warden, right? Inside of a prison. Who's the warden of the world? Because I see who the shot callers are. Like clearly Donald Trump's a shot caller, but someone's calling the shots big time here. And there's no doubt after seeing how prison works, and I come out and I'm like, it's exactly how the real world works. It's just a scale that you can study.
No, that's crazy. And I've got everybody at home. Let's please, by all means, if you want to send in questions for Taylor through Super Chat, or we'll open up the lines later on. We definitely can. We can do that. Let me just check to see how we are doing already. Let's see here. Dan Schumann says, and away we go, ready for the show, the vibe, the wit, the banter, all because of Frank. Oh, Dan, thank you so much. He left a very, very generous tip, and I think Dan became a member of the Nugget tier on Twitter earlier on. I saw that on YouTube earlier on. I saw that sitting in the chat room. Rumble, we got a nice group of people who are hanging out, and then of course Pilled is just rocking and rolling as usual. We'll get to you guys in a second, but here's a question I got. This is from Flare Battle. Said, Taylor, how do you feel about the current riots, and do you see a double standard in how prosecutions are being dished out to these anti-ICE rioters at present, at least?
At present, I see a huge difference in how they're hunting them down. I haven't seen them hunt them down, right? We've had riots ever since Trump came into office, and every time I see a clip, I'm like, well, that's worse than what I did. That's worse than what I did. And I haven't seen prosecutions. I haven't seen hundreds of people being rounded up. I know they've done some. Right, they got a couple people down in L.A. that threw rocks at cars and stuff like that, but definitely a double standard. But I guess we'll see, right? I mean, here's one thing. Here's one thing that I am not. I do not want to become the thing I hate. So I don't want the might of the federal government to come down on suburban mom that was in a chat room that decided to go to a protest with her whistle. Right, no matter how stupid that sounds and how dumb she may be for doing that, it doesn't. There's no parity when you put someone in prison for an activity like that. Now, if you obstruct ICE and do that, then yeah, you're going to have to, pay the price. But I do not want the government coming after people who just showed up, like they came after people who just showed up on January 6th. They came for me. I pushed a gate. Fair enough. But I know a lot of people that made no contact with anybody, and all they did was walk up under the scaffolding or walk through open doors. Right. So that's the kind of thing where I imagine from what I can see is the Department of Justice is taking that tack, whether they're doing it because they're corrupt or they're doing it because they're trying to turn a new leaf. I don't know. I guess time will tell. But I definitely don't feel like I want the government to go round up 25,000 people that show up at these protests. I want them to go after the people that paid for it.
Absolutely.
I want to go after people that paid for it, the people that encourage it, that are in positions of leadership. The people that show up on the ground, you're fodder. Right? Like it doesn't do us any good to throw the fodder into prison.
That, Taylor, that's the big struggle that is they're obnoxious, but at the same time, it's not illegal to have obnoxious views of the world and to be a completely brainwashed red diaper doper baby. Where this is just the world view that has just been installed into you since kindergarten on up, and now here you are, LARPing around in the streets, getting in front of federal agents, thinking that you are the main character of a movie, and suddenly you blow off your fingers because you picked up a flashbang and tried to throw it back, thinking it's absolutely insane. What people just don't even consider what kind of situation they're in.
I look back at me pushing on the gate at the Capitol, and I'm like, what in the world was I thinking? And it's like, oh, I know what I was thinking. I've been watching this online in 2020 all year long, right? And it was like, oh, it's a game, push the gate, and they spray, it's just fun, it's great. I didn't realize that this is like the real world. I mean, what really woke me up I shouldn't say woke me up, but on January 6th, I push the gate, get pepper sprayed, I go down to the yard, and then I see a video of Ashley Babbitt being shot. And I'm like, it was like I woke up. Oh, this isn't LARPing. This isn't LARPing. This is real. Like somebody died just now, minutes ago, right over there. We got to get out of here, guys. That was my attitude.
Well, yeah. When the woman that got,
because that was the thing. I've watched protests in Seattle since the WTO. It's like a pastime up there, right? I've never seen cops shoot protesters. I mean, yeah, you get pepper sprayed, and as long as you don't throw the Molotov cocktail in the cop car, you don't usually go to jail for, pushing the boundary or the bike rack or something like that. So in my mind, I had been essentially psyoped into having a much lower threshold for risk when dealing with law enforcement.
Well, I mean, that's the whole thing here. A lot of people got psyoped and then also provocateured. There's people working the crowd.
It's the same thing. Provocateur and being psyop is just online. Provocateur is in person. I mean, it's the same thing.
No, they were working the crowd. But what we were watching all throughout 2020 or 2012 or 2014, whenever the hell these little flare-ups happen every 2 to 4 years when there's a major election, what you usually see are a whole bunch of people who have been seemingly anointed by the feds to go out there and be given a nice safe space to destroy and build a fake civil rights movement around one ridiculous thing or another. And then all of a sudden you go out there and you feel that you're a little bit more righteous because there's an election that was obviously messed with in 2020 and all that other stuff. And then also you just spent an entire year and a half watching FBI agents kneel before George Floyd, and you're thinking, okay, well, I'll be shown at least some grace. And then you say no, and which is also the reason why, even though in places like Minnesota, ICE, as I said, all over the place, ICE is, well, we'll get into that in a second, but we're okay. I'm a lot more okay with ICE's current mission, with those feds' mission. But at the same time, you never should forget that they're feds. Ever.
I got a degree in political science, it was 2007 when I graduated, but I'm like you, graduated high school, 9/11, Patriot Act. Yeah, let's go get Haji. Let's go overseas. Let's bust those foreign terrorists, right? But when I went to college and I learned about the Patriot Act, I was like, oh, read 1984 and then Animal Farm and then go read, about the Patriot Act. And you're like, oh, they're going to use this against us. Well, sure enough, fast forward in time, and I have been prosecuted under Patriot Act, national security things with the discovery and stuff. Like, they did it. All that power, they just turned it outward and they turned it inward. I'm extremely concerned with what Palantir and AI and all the tracking that they're doing, because yeah, I agree with the mission today, but once they get them gone, then they're going to have a new target, because every hammer only sees a nail. And that's what I'm very, very concerned about. Part of me wonders if the Patriot Act was successful enough at keeping our borders safe that they got bored, and that's why they started targeting Americans. But then you go into real history and they've been targeting Americans, since the beginning.
Yeah, well, they had to go out first.
Well, I will say this. One of the things that became revelatory to me as I started researching my case and kind of how I got to where I was at, not just the event itself, but jurisdiction and stuff, is the United States government views the people of the United States as commercial enemies, which is why we have to get license to do things like drive on the public right-of-way. We own the road, Frank, but the government is a commercial enemy to the people who own the road. And so the government authorizes people to trespass on the road by giving them license. License is by definition permission to do something which is normally not lawful. So when we get a license, we basically sign up on their side against the people to trespass on the right of way. And this goes for everything. Like when I realized that the government on paper views the people as commercial enemies and everything is commercial, like if you go to 1938, Erie versus Tompkins, all law is commercial law. We don't have common law anymore or anything like that. It's all commercial law. And it's like, that's pretty revelatory. How do you fix a system that the clockwork of it, the logic of the Admiralty statutory system is that a natural living man or woman is an enemy to the state? That it can't go on forever. At some point, the state either eats itself or the people have to take down the state. They can't be at odds like that.
We have to talk about this in the second hour, because that I know that is a lot of really where your work, your personal work is, as far as what you're doing now, and how people can really just start refocusing on separating themselves more and more from a system that is tanking everything, even down to like inheritance taxes and death taxes and all that. There's a lot of people who are wondering what's going on. Like, for example, if you stack a little silver, you're feeling good right now. But, that's just, that's not the be all end all. And you see things are getting ready for a change. And whenever there's a change, the people who are in charge of the system right now, they always hedge their bets, and they're always there ready to install the new program that they're in charge of. And every iteration of this nation has really been a lot less of an advantage, a lot less of a privilege for those who call themselves citizens. Yeah, as you can see right now, there's less and less privileges for citizens out there. When
I was in D.C., there was a Ninth Circuit opinion, a Ninth Circuit appeals opinion, or whatever it was, that basically said that illegal immigrants had a fundamental right to carry and bear arms, unlike United States citizens who have contracted away those rights. So this is the Ninth Circuit telling you that illegal aliens have the Second Amendment as a fundamental, inalienable right that the United States cannot take away. But you citizens who have contracted to be citizens of the United States, you guys have given away that right, and you guys can't carry guns.
Okay, well, listen. Number one, it's a fucking court. That's number one. So there is the truth of the matter, there's the Constitution, and then there are the opinions of judges. So what that does tell us is, once again, the big issue is our culture.
It's not the opinion of judges. It is the law. If you go do searches, you can find this in transcripts, and they're legion. Judges tell defendants, don't mention the Constitution again or I'll hold you in contempt. You're not party to it. A citizen of the United States is not party to the Constitution.
What's the case again?
There's a lot of them. You will find that over and over and over again. If you look up judges who have told defendants that the Constitution doesn't apply to them, it almost always comes with a contempt threat, not to mention it again, and then they tell you you're not party to it. You're not a signatory of the Constitutions. You're not one of the 50 several states, and you're not even a United States citizen the way it used to be. And I'm not a sovereign citizen, folks. I'm not one of those guys, okay? But I
was going to ask you that next.
No, I've been accused. It's so funny. There were a lot of sovereign citizens that got involved with January 6th, and I'm not one of them, but I'm the one that gets the label. But it's because I wouldn't bend on my rights, right? So they would argue nebulous stuff. The courts don't care. My argument pierced because I wasn't making some dumb argument. I was asking, Judge, does the record reflect that I haven't waived my right to a speedy trial? Judge, would it not be honorable to dismiss this case if it's over 70 days? That was my tack, right? Like, those are your rules. Right?
See, that would have been another question I would ask. Do you think that if 72 days had passed, they would have ever really given a shit?
So that's the thing, right? The law is whatever the people in charge say it is.
Yeah.
And they're going to do whatever they want to a certain degree. So what I saw was they go out of their way to say the right incantations and the right things that are in some case beforehand, so they have stare decisis precedent, and they try to just get the right words on to get what they want. But they do make an effort to dot the I's and cross the T's. right? So that's why the prosecution didn't just put me on trial. They created a memorandum to put on the docket before I went to trial, telling the judge that the trial was starting on the 69th day. So that way, when it went to appeals, the appeals court would have that memorandum so that they wouldn't throw it out at appeals for being over the Speedy Trial Act. The judge got pretty upset with me at one point because I on numerous occasions asked the judge when my rights were being violated. I would say something like, "Judge, it just slipped my mind. It'll come back, so maybe I wasn't supposed to say it right now."
Hey, I mean, you lived it.
Oh,
so.
Judge, is it the custom of this court to leave to another court, as in the appeals court, to correct the known errors in your own courtroom? And he was like, ugh, because they're not supposed to have known errors. They're supposed to resolve them and leave them, and not leave them for appeals. And my judge couldn't resolve some of these errors because they were black and white. And they don't like that. They don't like being told that they're not following their own rules.
Well, I mean, the doctors don't like being asked conscientious questions from people as well. It's like, judges and doctors, they have the same category of pride. I mean,
yeah,
you see it all. Not that they're all the same, not at all, but especially in this situation, when you think about those who are presiding over COVID, for example, the doctors and the medical advice people who are really, really all in on COVID, and
the science is never wrong.
The science is never wrong. I am a priest of that religion. You understand that. And then, of course, on the January 6th end of things, this was a time for all the judges to really shine, and shine they did like a turd.
Yeah, and there are things like, for example, in the big Proud Boys trial, they found out that the prosecution was in their attorney-client privilege phone calls and emails and stuff like that. Even put a bug on one of the attorney's computers. If you catch that in the middle of an ongoing trial in anywhere else at any other time, it's an automatic mistrial, possibly even dismissed with prejudice. At least it's a mistrial. Go back to start and start fresh, right? No, we're just going to proceed and just move on.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I mean, and that's even more glaring than you have to get this on the docket within 70 days. You would think that right there, that example is even more glaring, where this is an obvious mistrial. It's so you're not following protocols, or there's mishandling of evidence or anything else like that. So I understand what you're saying, and it's good. I think if more people knew, and if more people held these people to that standard, but as time goes on and our hands are off the wheel, the system just essentially makes up its own system. And it's, the Constitution is essentially just a cornerstone of the new house they built. And it's subterranean at that point.
Yeah. And it really does come down to, we, the people, have basically delegated our decision-making on election day. And whatever the result is, okay, we'll just abide by the policies. We don't show up at city councils. We don't show up at our local, public or Republican or Democratic Party functions, right? Like we get so concerned about how, we don't get to elect people, they select them. Well, you know how you can get on the selection committee? Go get involved in your local county GOP and start there, and stick around long enough to actually make a difference. Don't go show up in a month or two, see all the problems and be like, it's broken. It'll run you out of town. You got to stick around long enough to become part of it, and then you can change it, So,
well, yeah. Well, let me look at this. I want to get into some Minnesota stuff.
Yeah.
Because this is crazy. And again, it's something other than just getting into who's got a gun here and all that other stuff. From this angle, no, it's more so of just the uncovering of the organization of things, where you look at something and say, okay, well, this is not organic. But I couldn't tell you who is giving the commands and where their comms are being kept and all that other stuff. First of all, this was last night or something like that. Protesters lay siege to Minnesota hotel in chaotic scenes amid unrest in the wake of a shooting of this other guy, Alex Pretty or something like that. Hold on a second. Let me get this up on the screen. Let me put you up there too. Boom. Okay. Wait, Matt's not here. And there you go. Good. All right. Taylor, they are people in you want to talk about double standards. People in Minnesota right now are hunting feds. Listen,
there was a January 6th defendant who decided he wanted to hunt feds too. Okay, he decided he wanted to go after his FBI agent, and they went to basically talked a bunch of crap online and did whatever. They gave him he got a pardon for J6, but he still went to trial for essentially threatening the FBI agent. They gave him a life sentence, Frank. Life. Dan Wilson. Now, he got pardoned by Trump because none of that would have happened had they not targeted him for J6 unjustly, right? But they gave him a life sentence. He sat in prison until a couple months ago when Trump finally pardoned him, and that was for threatening an FBI agent's life. So when they do stuff like that, that's a life sentence right there.
Dude,
that's a life sentence. And by the way, that was Pam Bondi's DOJ that did that.
When I looked at this and I was watching some of the video of this scene right here too, it was two ICE officers or whatever who were at this hotel, and these people were going in. The hotel is nothing. There are packs of people who are in the streets, who are in some cases attacking their own, bludgeoning their own, until somebody says, "No, he's one of us," and they're like, "Oh shit, sorry, man. Well, you shouldn't have," and like they don't even own up to that. It's like, "Oh, you shouldn't have done this, or you should have said this." In other cases, people are just following people around in their cars because they think they might be ICE, and then when they obviously they're doing something that's completely reprehensible. Number one. Number two, when they realize that they're not ICE, because there's no accountability and they're righteous in whatever the hell they do, they start telling people, "Well, prove it. Show me your ID." They're asking each other for papers.
All right, let's get rid of the Nazis. Show me your papers. I mean, it's stunning.
No, that's what's stunning. That is stunning right now, because I feel like we
don't want a pedophile in office. Leave that Guatemalan pedophile alone. It's like, come on, guys.
Dude, it's almost as if we're just watching things happening in a terrarium right now, and I have to just keep saying, as I've been saying for a couple of weeks now, this means the Minnesota thing. It's not all hate. It's the story of the day. No. This is the story of the last however many generations in this country. The reason why we're talking about Minnesota right now is because of what was uncovered with all of the massive, we're talking about tens of billions of dollars of fraud that can no doubt be duplicated and even expanded upon in other states of the union. ICE is in maybe not every state running operations, but in many states running operations right now. And the only places we're getting shit like this is in Minnesota, where all of these exposés have been done with the theft.
Well, they've written that this is their Fallujah. They're calling for people to come from everywhere because they want to have this be the stand. If they can stop them in Minnesota, because Trump hasn't even, the ICE is in New York and all these places, but they're not doing the big mass roundup like they're planning on. Minnesota was a target first. So if they can stop them in Minnesota, then they won't ever make it to LA. They won't ever make it to New York. They won't ever make it to Chicago. So they're calling it the American Fallujah. They're calling it that, not us, them, right? They want to make it so hard for ICE to operate that they can't get past it.
But that's the whole point. And you're talking about the difference between the decision makers and the fodder.
Mm-hmm.
There is nothing that ornery, middle-aged white women and their wet noodle men can do to stop the feds if the order is given and the Insurrection Act is actually enacted and all that stuff. I don't know what the plan is. But
if they do that Insurrection Act, Don Lenham, you're going to get the Maduro treatment.
That's what I'm saying. There's no actually stopping it. So the real question is, how many bodies do the people who are organizing this really want to rack up? They know that people are going to get killed. They know that they are at this point, they're in the martyr making business right now. That's why I always said, whether it was May 2020, when they sent Antifa and Black Lives Matter to the front gate of the White House, and all they got was gas. And in 2018, when all of those ridiculous migrant caravans were being sponsored on a midterm year, they wanted They wanted migrants to get shot dead at the border. They wanted Antifa and Black Lives Matter to get shot dead at the White House in 2020. They didn't get it. This is what they're looking for. They don't have anything else. They're looking to stack bodies.
They win either way. If you mow them down, we win. If you let them in, we win. They've set it up to where they win either way, right? If you resist too much, then we'll play off that between fundraising and then, of course, getting the American people to turn against ICE or whatever. Or you just let them in and you flood our cities and take our jobs.
If that were the only
and our votes,
if that were the only thing, the only factor, then I understand the win-win scenario there that you as a criminal mind would put together for that play. But there's got to be something. There's got to be something to the money. If it stops, where it's coming from, and the time that is still left to really lay waste to everything. Because the other thing here, too, is people are watching. People are watching, and I understand that we have to get to the bottom of elections, too. Because if real people, if only Americans are voting in elections, then I really think that, I don't know. The street armies that have been running amok for however many years right now, they are operating under the assumption that anything they do will not really negatively impact the outcome of an election too much because they have tricks to make up the difference.
They have tricks to make up the difference. Or it never didn't make a difference, right? Like they could do whatever they did and there was still that backload of votes. So let's just assume everything's rigged, right? You never get consequences politically for your actions when you can just print ballots. And so now, if only Americans vote and we have another summer of riots, midterms, the media is going to tell you that the Democrats might win the House. Listen, if we have a summer of riots and they fix the election, we're going to take 350 seats in the House.
Yeah. I mean, I don't doubt it.
The scale. So voter fraud is one of those things. This was the issue for me. I went to J6 because of election fraud, right? So when I got arrested, I had to take a really hard look in the mirror. Have I been deceived? Did Rudy Giuliani fool me? Did Sidney Powell fool me? Is the evidence they're presenting fake? Are these judges right? Like I had to really go down the rabbit hole to see if what I had seen online with all the voter irregularities was real. It's real. And it's to a scale that is staggering. Like, Joe Biden getting 81 million votes. Come on. Where's the 20 million missing votes, Kamala Harris? It's so large and it's so deep, right? We find little school district seats where we see 200 votes in the precinct and they're so jumbled when they do the hand count because it's just a couple people sitting at a table. They're like, dude, the Dominion machine doesn't even match. And it was like the opposite person won the election. You cannot have any confidence in any jurisdiction in the United States that even your local dog catcher was properly elected. You know what I mean? So how do you navigate out of this? We've got Donald Trump in office. The only thing that matters is election integrity. All of this stuff, in my opinion, will flush itself out in 1 or 2 or 3 election cycles if the elections get secure. If they don't, then it's all performative.
Yeah.
It's all performative. And the only thing that's keeping them from going too far is the whole, bend, don't break thing. We can't break the American people. We can get them to bend over by slowly getting them to acclimate. You know what I'm saying? Which is what we've been on for the last 20 years. From 9/11, take your shoes off at the airport. Do this. Next thing you know, it's put a mask on. Take this injection. We're going to tell you what to do. And we've been marching down this thing. They've slowly bent us to where we're prostrated before them. But if they did it all at once, they would break us and we'd fight back. So that's their goal, is just slowly do it. And so get the elections fixed. Get the elections fixed. A lot of this stuff will flush itself out.
I agree with you. It's an indispensable piece of what a peaceful path forward would be. It's an indispensable piece that has to be shored up.
And I'll just put this out there on the record. If Donald Trump is holding on to Epstein stuff to make sure he gets the SAVE Act passed, I'm cool with that at this point. You know what I mean? Because if that's what it takes, to get the SAVE Act passed, then that's what it's going to take. Because otherwise, we're done anyways. There's just going to be more Epsteins, no accountability forever if politicians can be bought and selected by people that have no accountability to we the people.
What's the bargaining chip there? I don't understand what you mean.
Pass the SAVE Act and retire in peace. So there's a book. I'm going to send people on a dark rabbit hole, but there's a book called Transformation of America or The Transforming of America. It talks about MK Ultra.
Kathy O'Brien.
Is that right? Okay, so you're familiar with the book.
She's our friend.
Okay, so Donald Trump, retired a few of the people in that book. Like the West Virginia senator. Hey, thanks for voting for me on that last thing. See ya. Have a good life. Go ahead and retire in peace. Even though he's detailed in that book. There's a handful of senators. Go back in that book and do the names. Donald Trump's retired a handful of those people in that book after they did a last vote for him.
But when you say if he's going to hold on to some of the, so what's the trade-off there for holding back some of the Epstein stuff, as you said, in exchange for the SAVE Act being passed? What's the trade-off?
I don't know. I'm not saying that he is or isn't doing.
No, I understand that, but in that hypothetical, whatever you say, like I want to understand what the trade-off would have been. Like what I didn't understand it.
It's basically like, listen, you have a vote this. Right, vote this way, get this thing that we need, and then you can retire and die in peace. And we won't destroy your district and destroy your legacy and destroy all the good people that actually supported you through the years that were, fooled, I guess you could say.
I understand. When it comes to the Epstein stuff, there's a lot of people who don't care about making any kind of deals, and I understand that too. I'm more of the pull the string until the sweater disappears kind of a person. But at least at this point,
there has to be reality in these conversations. And this is where I get frustrated with purists. And I'm a purist on some things, an absolutist. But look at history. History's messy. History's ugly. People in power do bad things all the time. The system is a house of cards. It's held together just because we believe it's held together. But there are actual infrastructure things in place. For example, who's the top of the list of the Bill Gates, or the top of the list with the Epstein clients? Bill Gates. Bill Gates is Microsoft. Well, Microsoft runs the government. All the software, all the computers. Like the second and third and fourth order consequences of just, cleaning the slate could mean literally the whole slate gets wiped and everybody loses confidence in government completely. And now it's Mad Max. It really can devolve that quickly.
What if, and Bill Gates is a squirrely little weasel of a character.
I don't like any of them.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But most people, at least I would say is, well, run me a scenario where the arrest of Bill Gates for some impropriety he committed personally would render Microsoft's ability to support government function.
He hurries up and goes, one of his lackey goes into their little back door in the computer and they shut down the Coast Guard.
Oh, well, also he's just leaving stink bombs on the way out the door, you say.
Why wouldn't he? Hey, I've met people who've left stink bombs in their life as they're heading to prison. They burn everybody they possibly can.
You're right.
Why wouldn't they? Hey, if you're actually putting in bracelets, you're going to cut a deal. You ain't cutting a deal. He's going to burn the house down behind him so that the house can't incarcerate him. I mean, I'm literally like, try to put Bill Gates in jail and watch the BOP servers go offline and doors come unlocked.
He would, he would sooner move to Davos and hang out there.
I was in the DC Gulag one night at 11 p.m. and all the doors unlocked and came flying open. My cell door, the door to the escape, the door to the whole prison just came unlocked.
Great.
We were in bed for the night and all of a sudden our door comes flying open. We didn't even know the locks were electric because the guards had to key them open and close every time to let us in and out.
So what happened?
Who knows?
Somebody sat on the.
Who knows?
Somebody's ass brushed into the button.
Now, jailhouse rumors. It was a hack. We were like, is SEAL Team 6 coming for us? Is this our big out? Like, is this where we're like, literally, we could have just gone down the fire escape and, walked out. And they put us back in our cells and they were like freaking out for a minute. And then it happened again 30 minutes later. Every door in the jail just popped open, Frank.
Wow.
And that's the kind of stuff you have to be a little bit. It's the same thing with the financial system. Why don't we just rip the Band-Aid and go back to the gold standard? Because then it would be over. Like the transition, there has to be a transition.
Yes. I mean, even when it comes to the more contemporary issues.
It's Iraq when we took over with Saddam Hussein and they took out all the Baathists. You know, the guy at the local DMV is a Baathist party member, right? And they fired him. When the United States conquered Iraq, everybody that was a Baathist is fired. Well, there's ISIS. Because they actually know how to issue a driver's license. They knew how to do the things, and we got rid of all of them. And then we didn't know how to administer Iraq. It's the same thing here.
No,
why don't you get rid of the deep states? Because a lot of these guys are in these weird positions that we need them to do a thing.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, because we talk about the concept of sunsetting a lot on this show, especially when it comes to government programs that have no basis in the Constitution or anything like that. And I just think that when it comes to justice on an Epstein level or exposure on an Epstein level, because the real reality of that has just of that kind of an operation, when we're talking about blackmail and gun running and underage sex slavery and all that other shit, it's just taken on the brand name Epstein. That's so people want to, I think, see evidence.
What we found out through Epstein was Victoria's Secret was she was trafficked, right? Wasn't it? I mean, it's like there's more than just
people
him.
just want a little bit of evidence that there are that power structure, that hierarchy is being at least challenged, picked apart a little bit, and we're moving up the ladder, because there's no reason, there's nothing after a while, at least if you don't want to pull the thread all together, there's no reason after a little while why any part of that should remain together. If you can't maintain national security or any semblance of world order without that level of espionage, human trafficking, all that other stuff, the kind of human toll that is paid and lost on those levels, then nothing is worth that kind of an operation. And to be told that, time and time again, whether it's from the DOJ or from Netflix, that Jeffrey Epstein represents just a singular rich guy with volcanic sexual appetites that nobody wanted to go near for some reason, because that doesn't pass the sniff test anymore. And the longer it goes on, no matter who's in office, the more people just become a lot more resigned. We already hate paying taxes. Now we believe we're paying taxes directly to a bunch of pedophiles, and it's just like insult and injury. It's galore right now.
Yeah, and the Epstein topic's tricky because it's everything we don't want to talk about combined with a lot of things that we don't know about. Right. So it's tricky. I probably shouldn't have said, if Trump uses it to blackmail him into putting the SAVE Act. But I mean, I'm kind of like, when Trump got elected and he put out that tweet that said, "He who saves the country breaks no laws," I was like, that's it. Because we're way past law. We're way past law. Right. So you got to use the power you can do to set things right and give it back to us. And then we'll take it from there. He's got a small window of time to do a couple important things. He's not going to be able to do everything.
I'm with you. I've been asking that question for months now, to really give us a chance to get back to some kind of semblance of normal order here in the United States. Is it going to be necessary to do some unconstitutional things? Especially since everything that we live around right now is
what's constitutional?
What's constitutional? Exactly.
We are, as conservatives and as Republicans.
Well, here, hold on. Wait. Let's get this on the record.
Yeah.
This is from Cam Higbee. Here's just a look at when there was some kind of an infiltration with the Signal app. There is a group of people in Minneapolis. I mean, you got to listen to this, everybody at home, if you haven't heard it before. This is what I'm talking about. This is the kind of stuff that we're up against. Minneapolis Signal infiltrated. I have infiltrated organizational signal groups all around Minneapolis with the sole intention of tracking down federal agents and impeding, assaulting, and obstructing them. Buckle up, all will be revealed. Each area of the city has a signal or several signals. Let's start with a screen recording of all members of the South Side group to start. And he goes into more. I've been undercover inside the groups for days. You'll notice emojis next to people's names. Here's a key for what the emojis mean. The highlighted positions are the most crucial. Most are self-explanatory. When they find one, When they find one, it's like suspicious vehicles, if they're looking for ICE. When they find a vehicle, they send it to the group so that plate checkers can compare with their database and see if it's known federal vehicle or if the patrol can make the confirmation so that the database can be updated. Dispatch runs a maxed out call all day telling protesters where ICE has been spotted and how they can best be impeded. And so you think about this. We had that girl that we put up on screen about a week and a half ago. Her name, I think her name was Ray or something like that. And I was laughing about how she was, she really thought that she was like part of the Rebel Alliance or something like that, and using very, very James Bondish kind of terminologies and stuff. I was like, look at this fucking LARP over here. We were called in and we, they call themselves observers. They can't call themselves troopers because they need a little bit of a CYA over there. So, an observer team went down to a gas station to make sure that an illegal alien was let go after being apprehended by ICE. I don't know how much of that I believe. I think if ICE has their person, they're just going to take them and go. But, I'm thinking to myself, who is making the calls or who's getting the radio signals coming in and hey, get on down to here. And apparently, they are so highly organized. They have a mobile patrol, they have a dispatch, and then they have license plate checkers. First, this is inside job, people.
Which the license plate, the only way they have access to that is either they've hacked the system or they've got somebody inside the system.
Which one way or another,
it's a crime.
It's a crime.
Yeah.
One way or another, it's a crime.
Yep.
Because there's no reason. I mean, there's no reason to be running anybody's license plate unless there is suspicion of a crime. And the only reason why they're running license plates is because they believe they might be federal agents enforcing law.
Yeah.
So the fact that this is being done on a micro scale where it's just like different neighborhoods, they're being run like, this is military operations.
They had it broken down in a grid. So you had your patrol group. So the whole city was broken down in a grid, and they were coordinating real time. So as ICE would leave one area, the next group would pick them up and follow them through. They were playing zone defense, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Minneapolis signal for each occupation or shift position, protesters have to undergo training. It's unclear what the training entails. Other than numerous slides of instruction, I've seen it mentioned repeatedly. Who is paying for all of this, asks Cam. Minneapolis Signal infiltrate each chat for each specific part of the city, has smaller districts broken up within what they call patrol zones, you're right, which guide ICE chasers on where they should be and where their position should be. Now, to put an update on that, I got James O'Keefe here. He put this out a couple hours ago. He said, urgent update. I've never experienced anything quite like today in my life. I've interacted with the cartel and have witnessed some crazy things in the desert in 2024. But what strikes me is how organized these agitators in Minneapolis are. They have spotters everywhere in the city and suburbs, on street corners, even 30 minutes away from downtown. They have people at hotels that work with them and signal them which made it making it difficult for us to lose our tail once my cover was blown. Usually I lose a tail. Not this time. We switched locations 3 times. I recorded and posted this while leaving Wayzata while they were still surveilling. We all agreed we must make the threats public ASAP. If we even had people still in the field with the hidden cams. Now, earlier around noon, while Cam Higbee released his report on the signal threads, I was inside what appeared to be a fully autonomous zone. No police presence. The police were told to leave. I identified myself as press, and they said that they will kill press and will not let me leave. My skin was fully covered because it was so cold, but because they couldn't verify who I was, they screamed and started throwing ice bottles at us. One hit somebody that's with him, a Marine who was with me. They patted him down like they were the authorities, attempting to confiscate any weapons. They were set to destroy our vehicles before we even got to it. I will have a full video report out shortly, but the bigger picture here is more important. I'm angry, but not at the agitators. I find myself angry at the people who don't understand what we're dealing with and will do nothing about it. When I got to the suburbs, I felt like it was a simulation. I believe the American people will need to wake up. This moment is a warning about where we're headed. Fear pushes people to care only about their money and their families. I get it. But when fear turns inward, when self-preservation and greed replaces moral courage, evil goes unchallenged, and history shows what we ignore today will come for all of us tomorrow. So he said, I'm dead serious about investigating the prosecutors themselves. If they don't hold these Minnesota fraudsters and violent mobsters accountable for what they're doing, stay tuned for the videos. So, I mean, that's...
Fallujah. That's it. I mean, they're doing it. I've said this on my podcast before. The Bolsheviks have a plan. Do conservatives? They have a plan. Clearly, they have a plan. J6 was pretty haphazard. It's pretty haphazard. We didn't have a plan. They have a plan.
It's the funding. See, I can't wait to. I want to see. I want to know where the money is coming from. Obviously, they probably have trillions at this point. At all the years that these operations have been run. Much like how with the Somali operation, the daycares and stuff, where all that money, so much of that money just left the country altogether to go back to Somalia. You know that there's no way in hell that the government that taught them how to do this is getting less than half or even anywhere near half. There is probably a 70-30 split on this at 80-20.
There's at least one big guy taking 10% somewhere. So you think about all the years that this stuff was just known and nobody was doing anything about it in all 50 states to one degree or another. Can you imagine the size of the slush funds there are out there after all those years? Whenever you need a little something, you need an operation on the ground. I mean, I don't know how much more they have left in reserve, but damn. That's what Patrick Byrne was saying about Venezuela. He's like, those guys can go for quite a few years without another new dollar coming in. They've got $1 trillion, $2, $3, $4 trillion tucked away in crypto, gold, and other assets, which is why you had to physically go get Maduro. You were never going to be able to starve him out. He could outlast Donald Trump. And I think that's the same thing with like Act Blue. I'm like, I mean, is Act Blue still smurfing? You know, did they fix that? Where the money? Yeah, if you cut off the supply, how much do they have in savings, right? We have no idea. But I do know one thing. If it's being held in dollar bills, Scott Besson can go get it.
Well, I don't know what this is why I'm saying, Taylor, I don't know what it is. And I understand that when you use federal power, especially in some sort of a off-label kind of a way, you're creating or enforcing precedent for responsibilities that they can take as an authority that they were never supposed to have that will obviously come to bite you in the ass politically at a later date.
So I can't even believe these words are going to come out of my mouth, right? But this is the Bukele model down in El Salvador, the great excepción. The excepción to what? The Constitution. Because you can't get rid of a judge unless you can impeach him. But if everybody's on the dole, then at some point you're just going to have to declare martial law and fix the problem.
Yeah.
And I hate to say that. I remember being in the gulag in D.C. and explaining to other inmates, like, there's going to be a Julius Caesar moment here where the Rubicon has to be crossed. That's where the troops have to be quartered in the cities. Like, there's, there are no laws. There are only cops. There's only enforcement. A law is only as good as enforcement. Go listen to Justice Scalia talking about a parchment promise, right? The Constitution is a parchment promise. If I can have a judge tell me you're not party to it, and it's like, well, we want to do something constitutional. Oh, constitutional like the Department of Education or the Federal Reserve, a quasi-autonomous federal agency that doesn't get appropriations, so there's no purse strings to pull. Oh, like that? Oh, like how about transacting in gold and silver as a weight and measure? Oh, no, we're doing fiat. And by the way, it's the petrodollar, which, and I have access to petroleum for exchange. How? Like, how do I save petro? We are so beyond
oil drum. You have to get an oil drum.
Yeah, we are so beyond quote unquote constitutional. And I am a constitutional guy, right? Like, I want to return to the Constitution, but that's the conversation we're having is return. So in my opinion, use the Patriot Act, round these people up, and then have an election where we vote people in that will then get rid of the Patriot Act.
Well, here's the thing.
That's what Bukele did. He used the tools that they had given their dictator presidents in order to get so corrupt. He used all those tools to overextend their constitution, and they just finally labeled it officially the exception. So instead of the fraud, they sanctioned it, and they just said, go fix the problem. He who saves the country breaks no rules. And that's why the president of the United States takes the oath to preserve the Constitution. He's the guy who, if he has to break the rules, he can. And a great way to look at this is to study the difference between law and equity. The president of the United States is the only person who's vested with all those sovereign powers. Equity overrides the law. And we, the people, have no concept of equity because it's been obscured from us in our education, but it's right in the Constitution.
I think the biggest thing that needs to be established, and was the hardest thing, is the minds of everyday people. I think the biggest problem is nobody really understands what, not say nobody, because of course we're talking to a largely enlightened audience, but when you compare it to what the average American sees going on around them and what they ascribe it all to, I think that we have a less than rudimentary understanding of everything, including a less than rudimentary understanding of civics and how our government works, supposed to work, and how dangerous of a situation we're in. Because if we had a little bit more going for us, I think that the best thing that would be happening right now is that more and more you would see states like Florida and other places that are just rushing to get their house in order, to make sure that the books are balanced, and to make sure that they are able to somehow generate some sort of a comparable way to provide health and health care, and if they want some sort of a state-backed, Social Security kind of a thing, whatever the hell it is, they've got to find a way to start line item vetoing the federal government and reclaim their state sovereignty. I think that would be the most ideal way for all this stuff to go back, and for that you would just need an enlightened constituency on a state level. When you talk about this, I think about I get it. I was waiting for the Rubicon moment prior to Inauguration Day in 2021. I was waiting for it. I was like, okay, well, all right, is this going to be when the Marines are called in and all that stuff? And I mean, it was a question.
According to the DOJ, Trump sent Taylor Johnatakis. I was the reinforcements.
That was it. That was it.
I was the guy.
I think. So I think about the martial law, and I think about that, and the first thing I think about is I think about perception of the average American, what's happening, and who's to blame, and who's the more sympathetic person that's being portrayed on the television, and even the most moderate of Republicans at that point. What would they say about the whole thing? Because I'll tell you something. The more disheartening thing that happened to me was it was either Christmas of 2020 or Christmas of 2021, but it was after the election. And I went to a Christmas party, and I was surrounded by family, friends, and quite a few well-to-do, your average Republican type. And they asked me, because they know what I do for a living, and they say, "So what do you think? Do you believe the big lie?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "You go the Trump saying everybody that the election that he lost that the election wasn't lost, it was stolen." I said, "You think that election was legitimate?" Like I was looking at it, these were not Democrats.
Yeah.
So I always think about the average people that I have in my life, that I meet when I'm out in grocery stores and everywhere else. And whenever you say things like that I totally understand where you're coming from. Because I look at Minnesota, I look at all this, and I think, okay, yeah, no, this is bad. We have an infection, and the infection needs to be cleaned. I mean, we have to clean the wound, and we have to dress it. But at the same time, I think about a martial law-like situation, anything that overrides where the rot is, even down to the judiciary, where that it's just like I don't. Throw a stone, you're going to get a commie judge.
This is one of those things. I've had this conversation so many times with people. Why not just do the martial law? Why not just declare the Insurrection Act? Because that's the last step, right? That's when you're done compromising and now you got to impose. Why doesn't Donald Trump send troops to go free Tina Peters? Because then he wouldn't be able to deal with Minnesota and he wouldn't be able to deal with anything else because he'd have already crossed that line, right? So politics is a synonym for power, and we have shared power. So no matter how much we want him to just come in and do the line, or we want someone to come in and just do raw down the middle of the road justice, it just doesn't work that way. And so he's making that balance where he's trying not to have to do Insurrection Act or anything like that. And he's trying to use politics. For example, right today, Waltz and Jacob Fry both talked to Donald Trump, and they agreed to let ICE get people out of the jails. And, they came to some kind of agreement, and Donald Trump's like, okay, great, now we're working. That's Donald Trump blackmailing them with something, right? Like, hey, you can serve out your term if you just do what has to be done, so I don't do what I would have to do, which would be insurrection, arrest you. I don't want to destabilize to that point, right? That is another thing too. Like, the allegiance of power when you get down to the local level is not what you and I what we perceive. I got arrested in a county one time, and one of the officers was like, I work for the county of blank.
Who'd you get arrested for this time?
I was the designated driver, and I told the cop I had a drink, and that's like no-go. And I was a J6 defendant already, so it was just like...
Oh, this is after the fact.
Yeah, I got it dismissed with prejudice. No, this was during. Like, I had that court along with J6 court, like, on a Friday and a Monday in Idaho and in D.C. So I was like doing this.
You're a real problem.
Oh, and I do all my own representing. I speak for myself in court. I don't do attorneys and stuff. Yeah, no, I'm a problem.
Keep going.
I get the system enough that I don't view the judge as anything other than just an old man who puts pants on one leg at a time. I address them by their first name. I try to get equity with the judge, equality with the judge. I set the prosecutor aside in everything I do. Whatever charges they issue, I accept them, and then I go straight to the judge. Judge, how can we settle this today? Right? So anyways, but they're like, I work for the people of Bonner County. Okay, well, if the people of Bonner County want to resist feds, his loyalty is there. They're the ones that pay him. So unless the feds can somehow cut off his paycheck, he's a stormtrooper for the county. Period. And every police, office, you're a stormtrooper for that police chief who answers to the mayor. Like, you cannot we said this at the beginning. They're still feds, right? They have someone who pays them. And on one hand, that's really good because we have diffused power, and not every cop in the land is loyal to the same person, right? So that creates they're watching each other, which means they're watching us a little less. But you can't discount it when you're like, why doesn't everybody just do the right thing? Well, they don't all know what the right thing is. They swore an oath to uphold the county.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the Constitution becomes a byproduct.
Yeah, there you go. Breaking, Trump says Waltz has agreed to fully cooperate with feds amid crime crackdown in Minnesota. What a sad sack of shit that Waltz is.
Here's the thing. When Bukele down in El Salvador talks about, we've got these prisoners and they, it was bad for them. Well, what about the people's lives we saved? By not arresting Waltz and allowing this transition to be smooth with Donald Trump controlling, okay, we sacrificed accountability with Waltz, but at the same time, we might save many, many other lives if Waltz kept his, stick in the mud and wouldn't budge on these issues. So whatever Donald Trump did to do that, whatever he did to get them to acquiesce, I think it's great.
Well, we have, it's 8:33 and we only have about 20 something minutes left. This has flown by, as I knew it would. I have some questions here from the audience that came from the thread that I put on the post section real quick on YouTube earlier today because I needed to put something up there. I'm just going to throw them at you. Jackson Schofield said, what, if anything, brought hope, consolation, confidence, or otherwise raised your spirits when you were incarcerated?
That's a great question. And when I was a little kid, I was really bored one time and I was probably grounded or something. And I was complaining to my mom and she goes, happiness is a choice. That's what did it for me. was knowing that my happiness was my choice, that I have the ultimate freedom to control my reaction to any given situation, and that I could choose my reaction to this situation. And rather than get into bitterness and get super upset, I chose to react constructively. I chose to write. I chose to consolidate my thoughts. I chose to, even within the prison, I was getting other inmates to call their family and commit to vote for Donald Trump, right? I was doing anything and everything I could to just have control over my perspective and my choices. So that's, and then the other mantra that my mom told me was, they can't take away your birthday. Right? Like, at the end of the day, I will always be who I am, and I only have to be right with myself and my maker, and that's it. I absolutely, through J6, do not care what other people think about me. Right? When you've had media and people calling you a terrorist, and to this, every single day on Twitter, somebody says I should have been put to death, I'm a traitor to the country. I don't care. They can't take away my birthday. I am who I am, and I get to control my choices, even if all I can control is my perspective on a situation.
Valuable, very, very valuable stuff there. Todd in Oregon, he wrote a lot here, so I'm just going to take the top one. Todd is not very enthused about Trump 2.0. It's not going the way he likes it, and he has a lot of reasons why, and he puts it all out there, and he's a very emotional guy. Actually, he's not an emotional guy.
Is he known to the show?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He's Todd from Oregon. He's not emotional. He's
Contributor
outspoken.
Todd. Okay.
Outspoken. He's out with it. But I guess the first thing that he said here is the most relevant to you. What are your thoughts on Trump right now? Specifically, how do you feel about the fact that he has no significant accountability for anyone, including the corrupt J6 Commission? Do you regret being at the? Oh, well, never mind. We'll take that one first. What are your thoughts on Trump right now?
Everybody could say go faster. I have no problem. I mean, I could nitpick things. I think directionally Trump's been amazing. Big picture stuff. He's done some huge things. I think the people who criticize him about not taking care of domestic politics before dealing with international politics are asinine. You can't clean up the inside house when you're being attacked from all over, and the trade deals and stuff like that. And the problems you have to fix at home can't be fixed until you change the world order and how the finances move around. So I think he's done a lot on that front, and that will be more beneficial to more people than holding, a couple hundred people in the deep state accountable or something like that. Not that can't be fatal to the things he's doing if he doesn't hold them accountable. I do believe that they are moving that direction. I don't blame Donald Trump for lack of accountability. I blame the United States Senate for not putting in attorneys and judges and things like that. The blue slip is a serious problem. Serious problem. He's running, Pam Bondi's DOJ is absolutely hamstrung by the people that they have sticking around because they can't replace him. And that is a real thing that doesn't get any media play on Fox News or whatever, because they don't want you to blame the Senate.
It's a very valid thing what you just said right there. I'm definitely one of those people who get a little bit more squirrely when it comes to watching the balance of domestic and international affairs. I mean, I understand totally when it comes to trade and stuff like that, but when it comes to war and war footing and arms dealing and all that's the stuff that I can't take. And I admittedly get very impatient with that, and perhaps I have some asinine opinions, but valid, and I'm glad I asked. Let me see if there's another one here from Todd.
And I'm not just, I'm not a sycophant for Trump, right? Like, obviously we have a connection because he pardoned me and stuff like that, but he can do wrong in my eyes. But I have a realistic view of politics in the fact that it's all compromise. It has to be. Absolutists get flush and they get nothing done. And the purists are almost damaging to their own cause.
Well, I know that you said I've read a couple of your interviews where you've been asked if you can do it all over again. Would you go to January 6th to demonstrate? And you said no. So I know that's a question that Todd wanted to know here too. So I know that you've answered that. You said no, I would not go across the country to join a protest ever again. And people can find that.
Catch me in my neighborhood. I'm not going to come to your neighborhood anymore.
But he said, I've always wondered why Donald Trump, and perhaps you have an opinion on this, why he brought all those people there on January 6th. What is now an obvious setup by the feds, or at least a high probability given the Russian collusion hoax, the impeachment hoaxes, Pelosi's actions prior to that day, etc. We saw one PSYOP after another during their term one. So how did Trump not see that disaster coming on January 6th?
Okay. Everything is an operation. Everything is an operation, whether you're on the right or the left. Everything is a conspiracy. Everything's an operation. Both sides put out propaganda, and both sides have an agenda, and both sides have a plan. The Republicans had a plan, and the Democrats had a plan. When Marjorie Taylor Greene came into the D.C. gulag, you know what she told the defendants there? She said, we had a plan, and you guys screwed it up by rioting. So you had two narratives, two plans. Donald Trump needed people there to encourage the House and Senate to send the vote back to the states, right, to reassess it. And there was a counter op done, and the counter op won the day. So Donald Trump needed us there. He was running an op. And whether you like it or not, yes, he involved us in an op. You're involved in an op every single day when you're out there in the world doing what the government tells you to do, like taking a vaccine or anything like that. And a lot of us want to say we're not in an op, but facts don't win, narratives do, right? You have to have the right story, and then hopefully it lines up with the facts. But that's my belief, is he was running an op. You know, he was running he needed a group of people there so that the congressmen inside knew there was real tangible support. Because one of the things you find out when you get deep into politics, it's like for every one person that shows up, there's 10, like, you know, if somebody shows up to a council meeting, there's 100 to 1,000 people, depending on the demographics of where you're at, that have that same opinion statistically. Yeah, but so if 1 million people show up, that means that's power. That's raw power just to send out a tweet and say, show up.
No doubt about it.
CIA can't pull that off.
It was a very cold day. You had anywhere from 750,000 to 1 million people there. It was all of that was downplayed, just how big of a turnout it really was.
And that's why you never see aerial footage. Like, I was there. That crowd was a sea of people. I'd venture to say.
Yeah, but wait, but Taylor, you just said that Marjorie Taylor Greene said, we had a plan, and you guys screwed it up when you rioted. Now, perhaps there could have been.
That was really early on before we knew a lot of the Fedsurrection stuff.
Okay, so now just taking what we know now into consideration, when you say that there's an op, there's always a counter or whatever. Why do you think there was not a sufficient amount of game planning as to how to counter what would be a significant agitator force inside of the crowd?
I don't know. Who was your attorney general? Bill Barr, who went on to collude with Fani Willis to try to put Trump on trial. So if Trump brings in his attorney general and says, hey, we're going to do this, and he turns around and goes, hey, Nancy Pelosi, he's going to do this. I mean, you see, like, he's surrounded by snakes, but yet we want to discount the impact of the snakes every time we want to criticize Trump.
I get you.
You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things, like, if you tell your CIA director to do X, Y, Z and he doesn't do it, okay, yeah, you can hold him accountable, but what if he tells you that he did do it?
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of thing where it's like, Bill Barr is special, right? Now, James O'Keefe in his whole revelation with the Brazilian person that Bill Barr was directly involved coaching Fani Willis, that was Trump's attorney general during that time period. You think he was going to be able to pull off some tricky legal maneuver that would have been required some DOJ backing? Well, you think he was going to get Bill Barr to, push these judges who dismiss cases on standing when Bill Barr is part of the system himself? And I was totally fooled by Bill Barr. When he first got put in, I had an FBI agent. He wasn't a handler, he was a friend. But he's like, when Bill Barr got appointed, I looked him up, and do you know he was involved with Iran-Contra? He's like, I don't know if we should trust him. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
There's a lot more there.
There's a lot there.
First of all, he's a Bush 1 guy. That's number one. The second thing there, too, is that around the same time, we were starting to put together how bad the situation really was. But that is when my attention first got, and I had my first conversation with Tony Shaffer. He's a military intelligence guy, and what is it, lieutenant colonel? I forget what Tony Shaffer's rank is, but
he was a lieutenant colonel.
Yeah, he was the one where
in Afghanistan
he got a phone call from Bill Barr. That's what he said. He said that he was called. This was right after the election. And Tony Shaffer was starting to look into and getting a lot of information on these box trucks that were crossing state lines around the New York tri-state, Pennsylvania area that were all carrying these fraudulent ballots. And that he got it when Bill Barr caught wind of what was a little bit of poking around into this. He called up Tony Schaefer directly to say,
Killed it.
Leave this alone.
Yeah. Now, the Tony Schaefer name for me was the Marine Lieutenant Colonel in Afghanistan. So was his name Tony Schaefer? I thought it was a different. Was it? Okay. Maybe I misassociated the name.
Yeah. No, that's
I do know that story. Yes. Yeah. That's the kind of stuff where, like when you're critiquing Trump, just remember you might actually be targeting one of the snakes that he's surrounded with, and some of these institutions are just wildly corrupt. But watching like what Lee Zeldin's done at the EPA, I live out in the West, right? I live out in the West. The EPA has a big impact out there. They've got way too many policies dealing with the environment because we got a lot more environment than you do here. You got a lot of houses. We have a lot of trees. And so the way they're rolling back some of that EPA stuff, it's going to make a big difference in the economies out West. There's a lot of things that Trump is just doing unbelievably well, but in the really sticky areas like the DOJ, the FBI, right? These agencies, yeah, man, it's going to be tough going. It took a long time for them to corrupt those things. It's going to take a while for them to be undone. And the idea that you can just fire everybody, yeah, again, you run into this problem. Okay, now what do you do with the gun charges? Because a lot of these prosecutors, for example, that came after J6ers, they were really good sex crimes prosecutors before J6. But remember, they just have a job to do, just like that sheriff up in Bonner County. You know what I mean? Like, I serve the people, and who do I take my marching orders from? The attorney general. And they work for who? The president. Who works for who? The people. In their mind, they've justified it through that chain of command.
I know.
And they'll do anything. They're stormtroopers.
Yeah, I mean, listen, even on a state to state, I was talking about it before. What would be my hope is that if we were really going to have a lasting change, we would see a culture shift in the country, and we would start seeing states really break away from the national government trap and back to the union.
Well, some states have.
Well, yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I love getting the all of the updates out of places like Florida. Florida has done pretty well for themselves. Nobody's gotten really close to being able to say, you're not getting the check for education, you're not getting a check for this and that, and really just keeping it close.
They're close, though.
Where?
Well, okay, so self-reliance and self-reliance is sovereignty. So right now, none of the 50 states are sovereign. None of them, because they're all on government money. They, a state senator in Idaho was like, we would love to balance our budget, and we would love to turn down federal funds for the state. But he's like, the problem is we don't raise enough revenue in the state and have enough of our own money. We need the federal funds. So if we turned them down, we'd have to say no to some programs. So they're kind of hijacked. So they're all sucked into that. Florida, Missouri, Arkansas, they've now gotten gold standards and gold and silver. And I think Florida has done Bitcoin. That's step one, right? Eventually, with their own economy and their own controlled financial system, especially if it's gold backed, they won't need the Fed funds anymore. So Florida is taking the right steps so that eventually they won't be so reliant, right? And that's the way we want to see federalism take place. We don't like this kind of federalism with Governor Walz where he's standing up against the feds for stupid reasons.
Yeah.
But, if this same thing were happening in Florida right now, right, if Walz was down in Florida and the way Governor Santos has set it up, they would not be so susceptible to cutting off of federal funds for all the different things. I'm sure that's what that conversation with Walz and Fry was. The county treasurer and the city treasurer came to him and said, hey, turns out 85% of our budget comes from the Fed, and we actually will have to not pay the utility bill at the local jail, and we'll actually have to shut down some services because we can't pay for them. They're not independent.
I saw, back to even to elections again there too, I saw that there was an election whistleblower. I think it might have been from Virginia. He was making the statement in Virginia. It might have been about Wisconsin. There are a lot of things being brought to the table right now that you hope it's just like, I think about Nick Shirley and all the sources he was working in Minneapolis out there. And, for a time being, I don't know. Right now, my suspicions have kind of been allayed, but for a time being there, I thought that perhaps he was being fed some information from the DOJ. Hey, go out there and do a little poking into this. Here's a lead for you, and once you get people's attention, we can be drawn on into this whole thing. But at the same time, I see a lot of people coming forward about very timely issues. I mean, Virginia is crazy. There's other people who are just going for broke, like the Virginia state legislature.
Oh, just they're not even hiding it anymore.
No, and there's a lot there too. They actually attached some restrictions for law enforcement in Virginia on what they can or cannot do as it pertains to elections too. Like, hold on a second. There's this crazy story. I didn't have it in my notes tonight, but I was looking at it a little bit before. Let me see here. Virginia Democrats. Greg Price, Virginia Democrats just introduced a bill that bans immigration laws from being enforced within 40 feet of a polling place. Hold on. I wonder why
they're worried that ICE is going to go park down the street from the election places.
During times the polls are open and ballots being counted, or within 1 hour of opening or closing, it's unlawful for any person to loiter or congregate within such distance to give, tender, exhibit any ballot, ticket, or campaign. Get it? I know you can't. The pamphleteering and all that is already illegal, but here you go. Section number 3. Within such distance to perform any act for the purpose or furtherance of enforcement of federal immigration laws. Like, why can you not enforce immigration laws around a polling place?
Their thought is there's no voter ID required. So you got an ICE agent sitting outside of the polling place. A brown person walks in. They say, "Let me see your ID." They're like, "Well, I didn't have to bring it today." And they're like, "Get in the van," and then they don't vote. And then it turns out they are a citizen. So that's what they're pitching their little committee meetings to get it written like that.
Incredible.
But that's not how it really works.
Oh, yeah.
If you just had voter ID, then you wouldn't even have that premise because nobody could vote without their documentation anyways.
Oh man. Well, they sure know their base.
Yeah.
Between this and eliminating the mandatory minimums for murder and crimes against children.
I'm not in favor of that, but I think mandatory minimum, that conversation needs to be had with Americans.
It does, problem. Especially for things like for like a drug possession charges and things like that. It's too much. It's too much, and drug classifications are absolutely insane. I understand with fentanyl and meth and everything, especially if you are in the business of producing and distributing. I'm not very libertarian when it comes to stuff like that.
I'll tell you what, the drug dealers I met in prison, their brains are broken. They have no concept the consequences that they reap onto society. When I was in prison, Donald Trump started saying to Sean Hannity, death sentence for drug dealers. And here I am in prison around drug dealers, and they all love Trump. And then they were like, I don't like that, right? Because it would have been them with the death penalty. But you have to realize, even your average little meth dealer, these people that get picked up that are not the cartel, they're just some addict that starts dealing. You have to recognize, when they deal to a single mother who leaves her kids at home alone, and then the kids get molested by the neighbor. So now the neighbor's a pedophile and he's in jail, and then mom's got the kids taken away, and you've got generational impact there. The carnage and the waste that drug dealers, even little ones, leave behind them is absolutely stunning. The BOP has done studies on this, how interrelated child sex offenses are with run-of-the-mill drug dealing because of abandonment of children that happens. It's really bad. Yeah. So it's hard with some of that stuff because you have a lot of sympathy for the individual drug dealer user, but then you have to also look at their impact on society. So I really don't like mandatory minimums, but we need to be more honest about the impact of some of these no harm done crimes, no victim crimes that we've alleged, like drug use. No, there are victims, and sometimes it's the lady that you're sleeping with kids that are being babysat by a bad babysitter. You don't realize that's a direct impact of your drug dealing.
Well, and then on the other hand, there's sexual assault and anything that has to do with the filming and of abuse of children and
that-
stuff. To think of minimums for them to want, I mean, I'm all for making the mandatory minimums on that, like 50 to life.
Do you know how many drug dealers I met that told me that they bargained away underage charges for drug charges? Because, you know, a lot of these dope whores are 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, and they're turning them out, no problem. But they're just like part of the package. They're not targeting them because they're young. They just are young and they're coming to buy drugs. They're every bit as a pedophile as the other guy that we would have to, you know, the child molesters, they get separated from the general population, you know. But anyways, it was like, well, you're no better than them. You know what I mean? You just pledge your charge a certain way so that it didn't show up on your paperwork. Anyways,
Yeah.
that was one of, going through prison, I met a lot of dirtbags.
Well, you know, that would be the place to find a lot of them.
It's highly concentrated. It's funny.
It's a concentrated dose.
I took it as a badge of honor as I was in there, as inmates would continuously tell me, "You don't belong here." I was like, thank you. I'm so glad you don't think I belong here. It's like when I start to look like the wallpaper, you know, I'm starting to belong. But I was like, yeah, it was nice. And I know a lot of other J6ers felt the same way. It was like, we got to see something that you wouldn't otherwise see. But at the same time, yeah, we didn't belong there.
Yeah. Jay Britt says, another great show, Frank. Welcome back, Taylor. Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. You know, there's so much more we can talk about. We haven't really spoken about what you do. And I think that's interesting because from what little I know, I think that people would really take a lot out of that. And there's a hell of a lot of social commentary that can be laid down there. But yeah, as we start winding it down, I mean, we're gonna go jump into the flip side for a couple extra minutes of talking. I would like to say before we end, because it's 8:56 tonight at 10:30 p.m. on Badlands on Rumble and wherever else they are live. I'm going to be joining Red Pill 78 and John Harold for an episode of Baseless Conspiracies. They say, hey, you have any conspiracy? I said, I have a conspiracy theory for you that I heard somewhere recently that actually ties Greenland, Venezuela, and the opening to Agartha, the inner Earth, together.
Okay.
And I
we got a wormhole through Middle Earth or something.
They said perfect. I said, you know. So I said, so I think like at 10:30 or something, I'm gonna hop on with them for a little while. It was a long day. Did a lot of shoveling, a little bit of sledding, a little bit of writing, but it's not over yet after this show. But well, is there anything that you would like to plug before we leave?
Yeah, so I've got my podcast, The Peasant's Perspective.
It's back.
Yeah, no, we're like 250 episodes into the thing. We do Monday through Friday. We broadcast. We go live at 6:30 a.m. Pacific, so that's 9:30 a.m. here. So we're a morning show. We're for the workers heading out, you know, the construction workers and stuff that want a news rundown. Play a lot of clips, a lot of commentary. So The Peasant's Perspective, it's everywhere, but our home is on Rumble. And then the other one is 1776live.us. So that's over there. I do a lot of real estate training and trust training. And what we're trying to do there is help people empower themselves to take control of their finances. Just like I mentioned, Florida using Bitcoin and gold, that allows them to have some self-reliance. We do the same thing. We take a look at your situation. We start looking at the contracts you have. The contracts create the obligations and the compelled performance that feels like slavery, right? So we take a look at all these contracts and we start to manage them a little bit differently, get rid of the ones that don't serve us. And then the other thing we do is we help people move assets into trust. 1776live.us. You can go on there and you can register for what we call an Ignite presentation I do on Thursdays. And I explain it in more detail. But essentially what we're trying to do is help people get out of the matrix, get out of the financial system, but you can't get out completely because, you know, everybody's got to spend a buck. But you can protect your assets. Andrew Coleman, who was the director of he was the commissioner of the IRS from like 53 to 55. He says, people have got to be fooling themselves. They don't know what the buying power of success was before we started to take it from them with estate taxes and income taxes. And the whole thing is prior to the implementation of estate and income taxes, if you built your wealth, you could pass it on, and they usually pass it on through trust. Well, now most people don't use trusts. They just put things in their personal names, and then when they die, the family has
in
to
their will.
Yeah, the family has to liquidate the estate. 60% of the estate goes to pay taxes, and the family gets left with 40% of whatever's left over. But the asset is gone, right? Whatever that income asset or equity asset was, it's gone, and you're left with this pile of depreciating cash. And that forces, as T. Andrew Coleman said, is that forces every generation to start over. So our objective at 1776 Live is to stop starting over, to try to take even small amounts of family wealth and try to avoid probate and pass it on and then operate out of that while you're living.
So 1776live.us.
Yep, 1776live.us.
I'll make sure when I get home I put that into the description of the episode.
Yep.
And your let me see here. Where on Rumble is your show again? Let me get it up.
It's I got one of those. I did the wrong username. It's user/peasants, the Peasants Perspective.
Peasants Perspective. I see Peasants Podcast Perspective. Let me see here. Peasants Perspective Live. Is it?
Is it the green?
It is.
Yep. The little beret.
Very
the Revolutionary
nice.
War guy. Yep. So that's us.
Put it up on screen right there.
There you go. Yep.
Very nice. Look.
Peasants Perspective.
I'll give you a follow. And I don't even know what you said, but it's probably good. So I'll give you a like too.
Yeah. And let's get those follower numbers up. Like 336 should be a lot higher than that.
That'd be nice. So especially if you're on Rumble right now, head on over and give it a click and keep in touch with Taylor Johnatakis.
Yep.
I've been calling you Johnatakis for
tomato.
You know, whatever. You've been through enough. You've been through enough.
Yeah. Tomato, man. No big deal.
You've been through enough. Okay. Well, don't go anywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to bring you to the other side of the end credits, which is called the flip side. And I hope that you are there to hang out with us for a couple more minutes until the lights go dim, and then we go on our way. And Taylor, you know, I don't know how often you pass through the tri-state area, but you let me know whenever you're finding your way within, you know, a stone's throw, and I'd love to try to find you a seat.
Yeah, you bet, man. I'd love to come back, and we'll plan on doing it again as soon as I can.
You're a great conversation, and yeah, I like when I can tell you're one of those guys, so I won't have to write too much. So that's nice. That's nice. I could just talk. Nothing.
Yeah, a couple guys with the gift of gab. We can go on forever.
Yeah,
huh?
you know, I mean, just one of those things. It's always good to have something to fall back on. I don't need to have anything to fall back on with guys like you. That's
what's great is we have the same context. You know, we don't have to explain things to each other. We can get right to our opinion or our analysis, and I appreciate that.
Well, we are going to see you guys on the other side. Let's see. Thank you again, one and all. I am going to read the super chats. Hold on. No, we're all caught up with them, and I'll be getting to the gold pills on the other side of that. In the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, I will be adding some members-only content. We already have everything that we read from over the weekend. There is no book club tonight. We're actually going to be doing book club, I think, on Wednesday. But if Chrissy Mayer comes in, then we might have to do it on Thursday. It's just everything's going crazy. I don't want to kick him out right now, you know. So we have to do book club either on Wednesday or Thursday. I'll let you know. You have a couple more nights to finish Ready Player One. Then next week we're going to watch it together. The watch parties are going to be awesome. I already have Ready Player One and also Drive from 2011 ready to go. So become a sponsor of the show. It is 20 years of me broadcasting this year. On February 18th, it is 20 years since our first broadcast in 2006. And I would love to have you on with me for that big occasion. We're going to have a very special edition shirt that we're going to be making available for new sponsors for $10 and above soon. But you can be a sponsor for as little as $5. And you get to read books with us, watch movies with us. We get the Sunday streams. You get all types of discounts. There's wonderful uploads, members only uploads of pictures and videos. I'm going to be uploading some from our snow sledding expedition today. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you, one and all. QuiteFrankly.tv. The sponsor section is there. And I need some pen pals. I send out posts. Go sign up for the post. There's room in the postcards. There's room for Polaroids, whatever the hell it is. And thank you, one and all. Much love. And thank you, Taylor.
Thank you, Frank.
We'll see you on the other side of the end credits. To the flip side we go. I did it again. Oh, Taylor, you were here for one of my screw-ups. Good for you.
I'll catch you on the flip side.
Ah, yes. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And it's good to have you around. Thank you to our wonderful super chatters this evening. We have Jay Britz and Dan Schumann, who carried everybody on his shoulders this evening. Thank you so much to our wonderful friends on Pilled. We're getting to you in just a moment because it is very, very intimate on the flip side. And that's what we do. We get intimate. Okay. Go to the chat room. Click the link I'm dropping in right now. Good night.
Goodbye.
All right, that's it. Thanks, everybody.